Welcome back to our communication series. In the first video, we talked about what communication is not and what really healthy communication looks like. And we spoke about how real good communication is when you listen to someone so deeply and so presently that you kind of emptied your brain out of, you're just almost like an empty vessel, right, Shlomo? Is that how you would explain
Yeah.
it? You're emptying yourself of any judgment, any advice you want to give, any anxiety you have about hearing the other person share their pain. So, in this video, I'd like to talk about how that sounds really hard to do. I mean, I know that as somebody with ADHD and just in general busy lifestyle, it's really hard to empty my brain and be present for somebody else and not feel anxious when they're sharing something with me, maybe even that is a frustration with me. It's really hard not to go into that mode of self, right? So how can we make it easier, Shlomo, for our listeners to be able to listen really well to whoever's sharing something with them?
Well, sometimes it just takes preparation, meaning you have to kind of take a few moments, take a deep breath, try to calm yourself down until you can really be present. Because there's constant chatter going on in our brains. And if you have those thoughts, it makes it really hard to listen because what we typically do is we all have our own filter through which we process external information. So when we hear things, we want to process it through that filter. So let's say someone's speaking to you and automatically, even if you're not getting all heated and reactive, you're still going to have that kind of interpretation. So you're going to be interpreting what they're saying. You're going to have this whole understanding of what's actually being said, and that might not actually have been what was said, or even the intention of what was said. So it's important for you to be able to really make yourself kind of a blank screen and to really realize that I'm just going to focus on the words that are being said. And you can even think about, okay, what is it that they're actually saying? What are the words that are being said? How could I, if I were to try to even remember what they said, how could I relay that back to them in a way that it's not interpreting? And that's a really good way to kind of judge how much you're really interpreting and how much you're not. And a lot of miscommunication happens because of the interpretation, because your spouse or someone's saying something to you, and then even if you don't reflect back what they're saying, you react or you say something, but that wasn't really what they said, or that wasn't what their intention. You picked up on one thing, and it triggered you in some way, and then you ran with it, and then of course, then you have this big blow up over nothing. Whereas if you were able to have listened without interpretation, you would have prevented yourself a lot of potential, backlash and grief later on.
Yeah, as you're saying this, I'm thinking to myself a recent episode, which I won't talk about here, but a recent frustration or upset I had with a close family member. And it really was a result of me interpreting. I could just I'll just tell you guys watching a very brief summary. But I really interpreted because of COVID that we weren't wanted this particular Thanksgiving plans. Just with our extended family, and I felt hurt because I really interpreted that this close family were getting together with other people, and I told myself a whole story. I concocted a whole story. Well, they're getting together, they have plans with these people, and they have this person coming to their house, but they don't want us. And I made a whole story, and I reacted out of that interpretation, and it didn't go well because it was like I came across already 10 steps ahead when that's not even what they were saying. I know that's very vague.
The point is that we all have our programs, stories in our brain from our own childhood and life experiences and painful experiences, and we take that with us into our relationships. And what happens when we have something that reminds us even of that thing, we automatically hook our story onto that, and we make this whole big, beautiful picture about exactly what's happening when that might not even be what's going on. I remember just
Yeah,
my daughter,
right.
the other day, one of our children was coming in. We were eating a meal together, family meal, a holiday meal, and and the kids were playing outside on the new trampoline, and we're just thinking, okay, you know what? I'm not going to bother them. Make sure they come in. They'll come in when they're hungry. The two of us will just eat together, and that was my thought. So one of my children walks in and they say, "Oh, why didn't you tell us to come in and eat? I think that you and mommy just wanted to talk privately about us and were excluding us." And this whole big story about how we were excluding them and didn't want them. And, I was thinking, that's actually not what, that was not my intention at all. I actually wanted you guys to have a good time and play and enjoy yourselves. So
Like mother, like daughter.
yeah, so you see
we
how
both felt rejected.
you see how we come up with these stories and we latch onto something and we just make our lives miserable. We're almost our own worst enemy. So it's really important to really listen from a non-judgmental place, from a place of real again, of emptying yourself out, really just being fully present, because that's the only way you can really hear what the other person's saying. Otherwise, you get stuck and you get sunk into this whole story that you create for yourself, and then you just lead to more and more problems.
That's such an important lesson, Shlomo, this lesson of interpretation. And like you said, we all have a filter through which we want to process information, but our filter is comprised of all of our years of baggage and childhood and experience in life, which is not the same as the next person. So we filter it through our lens and we interpret it according to our own story, which can often lead to friction. So in our next video, we're going to delve even deeper, make it even easier for you to be able to listen and empty yourself out for the person that you need to be listening to or that you want to share with, so that you can have really the best communication possible.